Hello, how you doing? Hello from the library, from Dale the librarian, I should say. Dale.larson@utah.edu. I'm here to talk about a new idea in reserves. I feel like a marketing shill saying something like that. It's not that big of a deal. What happened during the pandemic is that course management systems got lots of money, as you can imagine. And so one of the developments was this cool tool in Canvas where you can put up a reading list for your students and have it be communicated to the library through Canvas, where the library will look up things like copyright, or will scan chapters, or we will just make stuff presented in whatever way that you want. But then as things change throughout the semester, so like the catalog changes or the versioning changes, it'll all be like updated back and forth. So it's more communicative with the library. So there's a lot more automatic things. This isn't the only way to go through some of these ideas. So don't think that this is going to be a bottleneck that everyone immediately has to do. This is something that we're kind of developing and trialing right now. And I'm not completely familiar with it, so I'm just going to give you a brief tour of what I call the greatest hits. Do you remember back in the day when a professor would go to the library with their final reading list and they would present it to the reserves, and the reserve people would start to do research on whether we had the items, whether we need to digitize things. And I remember we had this really high-speed scanner that could scan 50 pages in a minute. It was breathtakingly fast. That was in a previous century. What we have now is something that plugs into the library catalog and it plugs into Canvas at the same time. So when you're in Canvas, you're going to look for course materials. I'm looking for my notes here. But a lot of people are tossing around the idea of calling it Leganto. That's the product name. Leganto, it sounds like an Italian car from the 50s, but typically follow reserves or course materials or reading lists or something like that, and it makes more sense. To get the plugin to appear, go into Canvas in any of your courses and click on Settings. If you don't have course materials appearing, you'll have to enable this. And in that list, so you'll start out in course details, but in the navigation tab here, you will look for course materials, and you'll have to enable that link. And then tragically, it sends you back up to the top, but you have to go down to the bottom and click Save again. I made that mistake. It's like, where's my link? And all of a sudden, course materials shows up right here. When you go into course materials, lots of things happen at the same time. So let me give you I'll give you the greatest hits tour, but it's fun to just noodle around with and see what different things you can do. And by the way, when you create this, you have initiated this metadata wrapper that knows your course name and number, especially if it has that like catalog, University of Utah catalog number. It has course instructors of record and all that stuff. So every time that you communicate with the library, all of that's going to already be embedded, which is kind of fun. There are ways of creating the reading lists. My favorite is from scratch, but I encourage you to try these other ones. When you start from scratch, you get to name your reading list. And this is for your students' benefit. Reading, I already have this. Let's call it Reading for Spring. And you could say, hey students, blah, 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 blah. It's like building a Canvas module. When you click Create, it's going to say, do you want to go by a template or go by blank? Blank means you get to determine the time frames. So if it's just one book or one thing, I would say that it might be worthwhile to just go on the blank. Otherwise, if you go on 16 weeks, which is pretty close to the semester model, it'll lay out the weeks for you, so you can logically put in things like that. Each week can be edited. You can change the name of it and make it into themes and things like that. Like all text is editable. When you click on one, though, and you click on Add Items up here, or you can click on Add Items here, you'll be confronted with these 4 menu items. And these are the ones that I'm going to talk about. So let's start with an article. So I was in Scopus, and I found this article, Cyber Ostracism, Effects of Being Ignored Over the Internet. This is like a 21-year-old article that's been cited a bunch. And I want my students to read that. For this one, you would go into Library Search. And when I first started with this, I was tempted to go in like, oh, I want to look at articles only, or this, that, or the other thing. I found that the most effective and reliable search is just doing the all resources and include records without full text access. So that'd be like print books and things like that. Or it might be things that the library doesn't have but are indexed. And I just paste in the title. You don't have to do quotes or anything like that. It's a rather smart search. And it gives you, did you see there's two of them? They're both the same article, but they might be represented in different databases, so I'm not sure it matters. When you click on something, it's going to say, okay, what week do you want to put it in? I'll stick it in week 1. I'm going to click Add. So you can click Add, but Add and Edit gives you the option to add a little more metadata for your students. And your public note might be, read this by Friday, or something like that. And you can also, if you wanted to edit, so if you don't want your students to read very much, you can edit the list of things as well. There's a display citation. That's like the thing that'll show up in this record here. I found that if you don't put that in, it just leaves it open for the whole semester. I think, fingers crossed, but you could granularly put it in, or you could say, I only want it available from this time to this time. I'm not quite sure, so I'm just going to leave that open. When you click Save, all of a sudden you see here week 1 has got something in it, and there's the article, and there's my note, read this by Friday. You can add tags. I think that's like if you were searching through many, many different articles. When you click on this View Online, when the students click on this, it's like they were searching for it in the library catalog, and the library catalog or some other link resolver will say, here's the databases that it shows up in, click on one of these. Or it'll dump you right into the article if it's new enough. Let's do a book. So I'm going to do add an item. And for this one, I'm going to do a print book. What do we do if we want pages scanned in a print book? So I have a book for that. So Direct Social Work Practice, Theory and Skills. This only appears in print. It's a textbook that we have many versions of, or editions, I should say. And again, I wish this was just clicked by default. You can put in the title. And this is one of those things where you don't get the menu item unless you click on it. So here's like different versions available. So I want the 2013. There's the 2013. When you click on it, and I'll put this one on week 2. This one I'm going to click on Add and Edit, but watch what happens this time. By default, it knows that we only have a print copy of it, and so it gives you the option to say, oh, I want to put this on reserve, and I want it so no one checks it out. I want it to always be on reserve, or I want it to be able to check out for these days. So this is one of those moments where when you push this list to the library, the reserve people will see this and they'll start processing it for the semester. It'll be put on their work list. It's really cool. What is it, I'm thinking the Fair Labor Standards Act, the copyright, fair use in copyright, that's what I was looking for. We can scan up to 1 chapter. So our policy in the library is to be able to scan 1 chapter. So you just put the pages in there, and then they will put it on the eReserve list for you, and it will populate in this particular record. Isn't that cool? So that's how you scan something from a print edition. And what happens, I'm going through all my links. What happens if we want to add something that we own? Say I have, for example, an Excel sheet that I want the students to look at. That's the upload a file. You can drag files there, but I love doing the full screen. And say, for example, I wanted to put up, I'm on a Senate committee, so I wanted to put up a list of all the Senate members as of August 2021. What it will present to you is copyright questions, because we, as the library, cannot put stuff on our eReserve unless we can confirm that copyright has been cleared. So if you authored something and you own copyright, this is what you would put for something like that. There's also other different ways to negotiate through this. And there's a button right here where you can already have consulted with Alison Maurer, the copyright librarian, and said that this one is kosher and ready to go. And here's more metadata, and here's more displaying in the citation. What happens if you have something that you're having your students look at over and over for more than 1 week? That's what this collection is about. Say I was looking at that cyber ostracism over and over again. We were really poring over the article. If you go to copy to my collection, once you've done that, when you go over to this collection, it'll be a list of items that you can keep on adding in later weeks and then change the metadata. So maybe you have to read these pages and read these pages. And that's what's going on with that. The last thing and the most important thing is I was looking for a save button, and there's not necessarily a save button. I think this will live in Canvas while you're working on it, but the library won't see it unless you hit this library review button. What'll happen when you click on the library review button is I won't receive a copy of it, but if there's anything in here that needs to be reviewed by the reserve department or somebody that was, if you put in something new that you're requesting in the blank form, you can request something purchased. It'll go to the proper department, and people will act on those things, but only when you click on library review. When you click on publish, that means it will be available in this particular Canvas course. And before then, oh, and there's even like published list of students, and so on and so forth. These are just the basics. Do you want to know more? What we have is, I have a set of links here. libutah.edu/Logonto is a quick start guide like I just gave you, how to add links and how to add basic items and things like that. Something that you should be aware of is that if you need a media restraining order, a media streaming request, that is something that you still have to negotiate and fill out that particular form. If you want something purchased on behalf of the library, or if you have any questions about this, or if you want me to work with you on something like this, I am more than happy to do so. My email is dale.larson@utah.edu. And have a fabulous day. Thanks for watching to the end.